I guess some people are just here for decoration, the CFO smirked, clicking to the next slide like he hadn't just carved out a chunk of my dignity and offered it to the room for sport. You know, like Todd here. No clue what he does, but man, that laptop sure looks busy. The laughter wasn't loud. That was the worst part. It was small. Mean. The kind of laughter you hear in school when someone trips and drops their lunch tray. Nervous, scattered, complicit. I didn't laugh. I didn't blink. My jaw locked so tight, I felt something crack near the molar I'd had crowned last winter. I stared at the CFO from the fourth row. Hands still on my keyboard, pulse a muted throb in my ears. No one looked at me. Not Diane from payroll, who I'd helped fix her expense dashboard at midnight. Not Leo from accounting, who'd asked me last week if I could double-check a reconciliation before the external auditors arrived. Not even Jenna, my cube neighbor, who once called me her data whisperer. They all stared forward like we were in church and the sermon had taken a nasty turn. I shut the laptop slowly. No sudden moves. Like an animal trying not to trigger a predator. The sound of the latch clicking closed felt louder than the CFO's mic. Then I stood up. I didn't say anything. Didn't crack a smile. Didn't offer a fake chuckle or mutter some self-deprecating retort to make them all comfortable again. I just walked out of the room, deliberate, calm, one foot in front of the other. Past the coffee station, past the sad little fern they kept forgetting to water, past HR's inspirational poster that read "Teamwork makes the dream work," pinned crooked as always. When I got to my desk, I sat down and stared at my monitors. For a second I did nothing. Just let the silence fill me like smoke in a sealed room. Then I pulled up the secure directory I hadn't opened in over a year. CFR_throttle_protocol. It was tucked beneath 4 nested folders, behind 2-factor authentication, buried like a landmine. I'd written it the year after I joined, when I realized the legacy trade clearing system had a microsecond delay in flagging cross-asset conflicts. Seemed harmless on paper, a 1.7-second data gap. But in the algorithmic world of fintech, that was a damn century. So I built a patch. Quietly. Wrote a compliance throttle that could kick in and suppress overflow when the automated reconciliation engine got twitchy. Documented it. Logged it. Filed it under emergency use only with legal. No one ever asked about it again. Until today. Until that smirking crypto clown in a tailored suit, whose last startup collapsed under SEC scrutiny and a whiskey-fueled TEDx talk about the power of volatility, decided to humiliate me in front of the entire company. The thing about being underestimated is it's quieter than rage. More focused. Cleaner. Rage burns. This was ice in the bloodstream. I minimized the folder and stared at the wall for a long moment. I could hear people returning to their desks, that uncomfortable half-silence of a crowd trying to forget what they'd laughed at. A few Slack pings popped up on my screen. "Hey man, CFO was just messing around LOL. Don't take it personal. You good?" I didn't respond. I just opened a fresh draft in Outlook. To CEO. Subject. CFR Protocol Inquiry. Body. 1 sentence. Then I attached the risk matrix, the one I'd updated quietly every quarter, showing just how many red flags the company never saw because of the work I did behind the curtain. I didn't send it. Not yet. Just hovered over the button, listening to the faint hum of the AC unit rattling above. They thought I was decoration. Furniture with a pulse. Okay. Let's see what the house looks like without the foundation. The walk back to my desk felt like something out of a war movie. Slow motion, no music, just the sound of fluorescent lights buzzing, and the occasional chair creak from people pretending not to notice me. I wasn't limping, but I may as well have been. Shame has weight, and right then it sat on my shoulders like I owed it rent. No one said a word. Not out loud. But I saw it in their eyes. The pity. The cowardice. The cold-blooded calculation of colleagues wondering if their association with office furniture Todd might devalue their standing. Like I was some contagious inefficiency. A Slack ping blinked on my screen before I'd even sat down. Man, that was rough. He always pushes too far. Hope you are okay. Another one, seconds later. We know you do stuff. Don't let him get to you LOL. LOL. Nothing like a digital pat on the back to say, Please don't make this awkward for the rest of us. I didn't reply. Didn't even open the threads. Just hovered my hand over the mouse for a second, then shifted my focus to the bottom right corner of the screen. 2 icons deep, where only the paranoid or the prepared go. I double-clicked the encrypted volume. CFR, Throttle Protocol. I hadn't opened it in 21 months. Hadn't needed to. That was the whole point. It was designed to sit in the dark, like a fire extinguisher under a glass box labeled in case of executive hubris, break seal. 2 years ago, I inherited a digital house of cards. The previous CFO, an Excel wizard with a God complex, had authorized a homegrown reconciliation tool to speed up cross-asset transaction reporting. What no one realized at the time was that the engine had a tiny buffer flaw. Nothing fatal. Nothing obvious. But if enough transactions hit it in a short window, it would misalign timestamp flags, feeding garbage into the compliance metrics. Think of it like a toilet flushing just slow enough to seem functional, until someone runs a stress test, and the whole floor floods with legal liability. When I found it, I didn't make noise. I just built a silent patch, a throttle that could recognize anomalies in the data stream and apply suppression logic to buy us time. A tourniquet for bad code. Not sexy, not flashy, but effective. And very, very invisible. I wrote it in hardened C, with failsafes to avoid recursion loops, and buried the activation trigger behind a compliance audit interface. If you didn't know where to look, it looked like nothing. Just a checkbox labeled Review Mode. Something you click during internal testing and never think twice about. That's what was still running today. The only thing standing between this company and a full-on SEC violation. Until I unchecked it. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Out of principle. They made it clear. I wasn't valued. I wasn't even seen. So why keep saving them? Why keep holding the wall when the people behind it were spitting on you? I tapped the keyboard. Brought up the interface. Hovered over the toggle. 1 click. That's all it would take. It wouldn't shut down the system. It wouldn't crash trades. It wouldn't even send an alert. It would just stop filtering. Stop cleaning up behind the scenes. Stop hiding the mess they refused to acknowledge. I sat there a moment longer. Let the idea settle. Let the silence wrap around me like armor. This wasn't sabotage. This was subtraction. Removing the protection I'd handcrafted and quietly maintained like some digital janitor, mopping up data vomit while executives got bonuses for flawless quarterly audits. I clicked the toggle. Review mode, off. The interface flickered. Nothing dramatic. Just a gentle confirmation. Like a scalpel making its first incision. I leaned back in my chair, breathing slow. Not triumphant. Not anxious. Just clean. Like something had finally snapped into place. Across the room, I heard the CFO laughing at something again. Probably one of his interns. Probably another joke. Probably another reason to think I was harmless. Let him laugh. The system was awake now. And it wasn't cleaning up after anyone anymore. Subject: CFR Protocol Review. Body: if you'd like to see what the CFO just disabled with his ignorance, see attached. That was it. No salutation. No signature. No fluff. Just 16 words and 1 PDF attachment. The file itself was surgical. 6 pages, all redacted for personnel names but screaming in color-coded blocks. Yellow, orange, blood red. At the top, risk exposure model, CFR throttle deactivated state, not for distribution. The key diagram showed what would happen if automated reconciliations continued unfiltered. Transaction mismatch rates climbing by the hour, compliance variance breaching thresholds in 3 business days, and a catastrophic audit failure likelihood at 88% if left uncorrected through end of quarter. I hadn't forged a single number. Just fed live data into a scenario generator I built 2 years ago for internal testing. A tool no one had used. A tool I'd named Ghostlight, because when it lit up, it meant the show was over. I sent the email at 2:31 p.m. Didn't BCC anyone. Didn't loop in legal. Just let it land like a stone dropped in still water. Then I toggled review mode, off in the backend interface. Click. The cursor blinked at me. Nothing crashed. Nothing beeped. No fire alarms, no screen flickers. That's how it was supposed to work. Quiet. Passive. All it did was unshutter the windows. See, most people don't understand what compliance really is. They think it's a department. A checklist. A spreadsheet someone updates before the auditors come. But it's not. Compliance is a rhythm. 1,000 tiny metronomes ticking behind every transaction, flagging anomalies, catching drift, sinking margins before they cascade into chaos. The throttle was my conductor baton. And now it was resting on the table. I minimized the terminal window. Opened a blank notepad file. Started typing for no reason at all. Just to keep my hands busy. They think the silence means nothing is happening. I deleted the sentence. Didn't save the file. On the other side of the office, I saw movement through the frosted glass walls of the executive suite. Someone stood. A chair scraped. I heard the familiar rhythm of dress shoes. Fast, hard, authoritative, moving toward the bullpen. The first domino had been tipped. But I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean. Like someone who had finally stopped holding their breath. I opened my email again, check sent mail. It was there, bold and unassuming. If you'd like to see what the CFO just disabled with his ignorance, see attached. No threats. No demands. No pleas for recognition. Just a statement of fact, and the blueprints of a system they'd never understood. Until now. Until the walls started to whisper, that IT started with a door slam. Not the kind that says someone's in a hurry. The kind that says someone just got told their company might be sitting on a financial landmine. One they didn't even know existed until it started ticking. By 2:39 p.m., 8 minutes after I hit send, the CEO's office door blew open hard enough to rattle the sad, inspirational posters outside HR. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I could feel the tremors in the air. There's a specific kind of stillness that drops over an office when a powerful man forgets decorum. It tastes like ozone and panic. Then I heard my name. Not called. Not announced. Barked. Todd. Heavy footsteps. Too fast for a man who wears $800 loafers and normally floats from one meeting to the next like a gilded ghost. He rounded the corner and locked eyes with me. Red-faced and panting like someone had sucker punched his retirement account. "You wrote this?" he demanded, waving a printout of my email. The paper was already creased like he'd crumpled it, uncrumpled it, then decided it was too dangerous to throw away. I nodded. Calm. Serene. The kind of stillness that comes from knowing exactly how sharp your scalpel is. "If you'd like," I said, "I can walk you through the impact assessment." Behind him, the CFO appeared like a bad subplot, lazily curious, then annoyed, then very visibly, not okay. He scanned the red-stamped printout the CEO shoved at him. I watched in real time as his smug little smirk wilted into something flaccid and sweaty. "What the hell is this?" he asked. I turned toward him, not aggressive, just factual. "It's the exposure report your comment triggered. You disabled the compliance throttle this afternoon. The system is now running raw. Unfiltered. Real-time reconciliation with legacy drift." His eyes darted around, trying to find someone who'd step in and tell him this was a joke. No one did. The CEO pointed at me again, tighter this time. "Get legal and IT in the conference room. Now. We're pulling an emergency audit. And you," he jabbed the report against my desk. "You're coming with me." I stood up. He stormed off without checking if I followed. Of course I did. The CFO didn't move. Just stood there, blinking. It's a strange thing, watching a man realize in slow motion that he might have just publicly humiliated the wrong person in front of 200 employees and unknowingly torn the duct tape off the company's only functioning safety net. I passed Jenna on the way to the boardroom. Her eyes were wide. She mouthed, "What's happening?" I didn't answer. Because what was happening couldn't be summed up in a Slack message or a hallway whisper. What was happening was the moment the company found out what decorative looks like, when it walks out of the background and puts receipts on the table. The boardroom door shut behind me with a soft click. The CEO pulled up a chair like a man about to sit through an exorcism. And me? I opened my laptop. No panique. No ego. Just a cursor blinking steadily above the words. CFR_protocol_status. Disengaged. Let the reckoning begin. The audit team didn't even make it past the first hour before someone cursed under their breath. We were sitting in the glass box they called Conference Room A, under recessed lights so bright they made everyone's forehead shine like gilt. The CEO was pacing like a caged animal, legal hunched in one corner whispering into a headset. And the CFO was parked beside the big screen, arms crossed, trying to look unbothered while his face turned a deeper shade of panic with every refresh. On the screen, a rolling report from the internal compliance tool. Live feed. The kind of thing most execs never look at unless there's a subpoena in the subject line. It was a symphony of quiet disaster. Automated trade reconciliations, normally as smooth as melted wax, were stuttering. Mismatches were appearing like rot under drywall. Position reports weren't lining up with settlement logs. The reconciliation engine was triggering alert flags that no one had ever seen outside of mock training. Red, yellow, orange, red. What the hell am I looking at? The CEO barked, stabbing a finger at the screen. Janine from Audit, a pit bull in heels, answered without blinking. What you're looking at is a system that's been quietly suppressing anomalies for at least 11 months. With the throttle disengaged, we're seeing every inconsistency that was previously contained and smoothed. Contained how? The CEO asked. Everyone turned and looked at me. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I wrote a compliance throttle. A buffer protocol. It bought the system time to resolve lag-induced mismatches before they triggered red flags. Not illegal. Just essential. The CFO scoffed. You were hiding data? Without executive sign-off. Janine cut him before I could answer. That's not what this is. His system was compensating for a legacy defect in the way cross-asset trades timestamp. Without it, the engine reads drift where there isn't any. And this is the fun part. She clicked into a log file, brought up my name, then a full timeline, then lines of comments from my original code submission. Every single one with a matching entry in our internal dev repo. Timestamped. Approved. Filed. This wasn't hidden, she said. It was just never understood. Legal leaned in, whispered something to the CEO. He paled. The word non-compliant made its first appearance then. Whispered like a curse. Carried like smoke. The CFO turned a deeper shade of defensive. Why wasn't this escalated? If it was that serious, why didn't you bring it to me directly? I turned to face him fully, calm as ever. You assumed I was decorative. I assumed you were competent. Apparently, we were both wrong. He opened his mouth, shut it, then turned to the CEO with that squirming look executives get when they know the ship's taking on water, and they're still holding the cork. I want this fixed, the CEO snapped. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't grandstand. I just reached into my bag and pulled out a small flash drive. Silver. Scratched. Labeled with a strip of blue painter's tape and the word witness. I placed it gently in front of him. You'll want this, I said. It contained everything. Change logs. Documentation. Email trails. Every timestamped update. Every internal warning I sent about the legacy flaw. Even the meeting minutes from a 2-year-old discussion where I first proposed building the throttle. Approved by the previous CFO, who called it a smart band-aid for a stupid wound. Nobody spoke. The room went so still. I could hear the fans in the ceiling kick on. In that moment, I wasn't just the man they'd humiliated. I was the architect of their stability. The only one who had ever read the damn wiring diagram before they started hanging up chandeliers. And now the lights were flickering. The building was nearly empty by the time the email came through. Subject line, can you stop by? I stared at it for a full minute, sipping cold coffee that tasted like burnt compromise. Then I shut down my terminal, pocketed the empty mug, and walked to the corner office. The one with the skyline view and the fake ficus plant no one ever watered but never died. The CEO stood at the window like a man posing for a painting he hated. Todd, he said, not turning. Appreciate you coming in. I'm still on the clock, I replied. He gave a dry chuckle, then turned to face me. His tie was off, sleeves rolled, jaw tight. This was not the man who smirked through press releases and earnings calls. This was the man who just spent the day realizing the foundation of his empire wasn't cement. It was duct tape held together by someone he'd let be humiliated on stage. I made a mistake, he started. I said nothing. He motioned to the small round table by the side wall. A low move. That table was where deals were made, the friendly, off-the-record kind. No desk between us. Just desperate proximity. We sat. He leaned in. I want to make this right. He slid a typed offer across the table like a hostage note. On it, a 42% raise, reclassification to Senior Vice President of Compliance Architecture, retroactive to Q1. A public apology to be issued at the next all-hands. Full autonomy over the risk systems. I read it once. Noi moustin. Just data. Then I folded the paper in half, slowly, precisely, and handed it back to him. No, I said. He blinked. No. I was told I'm only here to look pretty, I said, voice steady. So I intend to look pretty elsewhere. His mouth opened, but the words didn't come. Just the soft collapse of corporate ego hitting something immovable. I can't fix this without you, he finally said. You never fixed it with me, I replied. You just never noticed it was broken because I made sure you didn't have to. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. Do you know how this looks to the board? Do you know how it looks to me that your CFO couldn't read a redacted risk matrix without mistaking it for a performance review? He flinched at that. Good. I'm not negotiating, I added. This isn't a leverage play. I'm done. You'll survive. You've got plenty of people who laugh on cue and decorate the org chart like Christmas ornaments. I was just furniture, remember? A long silence. Just the whir of the HVAC and the ghost of his ambition unraveling. You're angry. I was, I said. Now I'm just done pretending your version of leadership is worth patching anymore. He slumped back in the chair like the air had been sucked out of him. This will go public, he said quietly. I know. And you'll come out looking like. I'll come out looking like what I am. Documented. Proven. And finally visible. I stood. Straightened my jacket. Walked to the door. Todd, he started. I stopped. Looked back. You should tell your comms team to prep something warm and vague. Maybe. We regret the misalignment of internal protocols and remain committed to excellence. Something like that. He didn't respond. I walked out, lights flickering overhead. Shoes clicking on marble tile like the last sound in a silent theater after curtain close. He thought this was the ending. He had no idea the next act was already in motion. And this time I wasn't hiding behind any throttle. It broke at 9:42 a.m. sharp, just after the market bell. A tech blog called Decimal Dagger, known for their smug little scoops and insider leaks, dropped a headline that might as well have been a corporate obituary. Exclusive, mid-tier fintech firm quietly disables internal risk system. $97M in exposure uncovered. The subheading twisted the knife. Source claims decorative employee was actually backbone of compliance protocol. System manually disabled by executive oversight. Within an hour, it was on Twitter, then LinkedIn. Then Reuters picked it up. Hashtags started sprouting like weeds in an abandoned lawn. Hashtag Throttlegate. Hashtag Risky Business. Hashtag CFOOps. The article didn't name me, but it didn't have to. It quoted a proprietary compliance buffer being turned off, mentioned an unnamed veteran systems analyst, cited internal logs showing a spike in transaction anomalies within hours of a quarterly finance all-hands meeting. The rest wrote itself. By 11:15 a.m., the company's main Slack channel was a ghost town. No one was posting memes. No one was hyping sales wins. People were DMing each other like rats under a sinking ship's floorboards. Clients began calling. Panicked. Angry. Curious. Some demanded freeze audits. Others pulled pending wires. And then came the real kick in the teeth. Stock price down 11% by lunch. At 1 p.m. sharp, the CFO went on the Q3 earnings call. You could hear the smarm through the speaker like syrup poured over rot. We're in the process of improving internal systems, he said, voice smooth but thin. This is an exciting opportunity to modernize outdated compliance infrastructure. He had the gall to say opportunity like the SEC wasn't already sniffing around our audit trail, like a bloodhound on Red Bull. But it didn't end there. No. because the internet has teeth and a memory. Around 3:40 p.m., a new clip hit Twitter. Grainy. Shot vertically. Clearly someone had recorded the all-hands meeting on their phone. The moment. The CFO standing on stage, smug as hell, grinning as he said, "I don't even know what Todd does, to be honest. Probably just here to make the spreadsheets look busy. Like office furniture, if the desk had a pulse." Then the laughter. Cold. Complicit. It racked up 80,000 views in 2 hours. By dinner, it had its own TikTok remix. Even worse, for him, a few people started connecting dots in the comments. Employees. Ex-employees. A former intern. One of the analysts from Janine's audit team. The narrative formed fast and loud. Wait. The guy they mocked was the one holding the walls up. So the CFO turned off a system he didn't understand just to flex? You mean that guy was the firewall? And they fired him? I didn't respond. I didn't repost. But I read every word. I sat at home in my quiet apartment, laptop open, watching the fire spread while sipping peppermint tea like it was bourbon. Then, at 8:13 p.m., I got a LinkedIn DM from someone I hadn't heard from in years. A former board member. Quiet guy. Left after a messy merger. Never liked the CFO. Rarely spoke. We'd like to talk. Soon. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because finally, the truth wasn't just visible. It was viral. And the man who once joked I was furniture was now watching the house collapse from a chair that looked awfully unsteady. They called it an informal emergency session. Like dressing it in soft language would somehow muffle the sound of panic. But when you walk into a boardroom full of people who haven't looked you in the eye in 2 years and suddenly they all want your clarity, you know exactly what kind of fire drill you've been invited to. It was 7:05 p.m., and the mahogany conference table was lined with 12 board members, some remote, some in person, all wearing that same brittle expression. The one rich people get when their reputations are about to be audited. The CFO was already there, looking like a man trying to sweat charm. The CEO sat beside him, pale and stiff, sipping black coffee like it might sober the weak. I walked in without a folder, without a laptop, without fanfare. They'd asked for clarity. I brought facts. Janine from audit had already laid the groundwork in the pre-briefing, which I was told wouldn't be necessary for you to attend. Translation. We need to soften the blow before the guy we ignored dismantles us with precision. So when I spoke, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean into theatrics. I just told the truth. I explained how the original cross-asset trade timestamp system drifted by milliseconds, just enough to corrupt settlement logs. How I discovered it during a quarterly stress test 2 years ago. How I flagged it to the former CFO, documented it, built a stopgap throttle that would filter anomalies and keep the system clean until they could afford to modernize. How that stopgap became structural because, spoiler alert, no one prioritized fixing the foundation when the walls still looked shiny. I told them how the throttle was triggered from review mode. How with one click it could be disabled. And how the current CFO, after mocking me publicly, triggered its shutdown without understanding what it was holding back. One director, a gray-haired woman with tortoiseshell glasses, leaned back in her chair and muttered just loud enough to be heard. He was our firewall. Another board member, the former VP of operations from our biggest investor firm, turned to the CEO. You were warned. The CEO's mouth opened, but the words didn't quite find the exit. We had visibility on compliance, he croaked. I almost laughed. Instead, I pulled a USB from my jacket pocket and placed it on the table. This contains the full throttle patch history, logs, documentation, correspondence, every version, timestamped, verified. It's also uploaded to the internal archive, with access permissions extended to all board-level auditors. No threats, no dramatics, just the clean, simple presentation of receipts. There was a long pause. The chair of the board finally cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Winters. You've been more than clear. They asked me to step out into the hallway. I waited in silence. Didn't check my phone. Didn't pace. 5 minutes later, the door reopened. The CEO didn't look up as I walked back in. The chair stood. Effective immediately, the Chief Financial Officer is being placed on administrative leave pending internal review and external audit cooperation. The CFO blinked, looked around like a man realizing the applause wasn't coming. The chair turned to the CEO next. You have 30 days to present a restructuring plan for executive relations and risk oversight. The board will review your proposal on October 12th. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I simply nodded once, turned, and walked to the coat rack. Grabbed my black folder, the one labeled CFR Throttle, Legacy and Closure. As I walked out, no one stopped me. No one thanked me. But every single person watched me. And that was enough. Not with a bang. Not with a speech. Just a man walking out of a burning building, calm, collected, and holding the matches no one realized he'd set down. Total control. At last, the desk is smaller, cleaner. No fake ficus in the corner. No buzz of a floor-wide-open office trying to convince itself it's innovative. Just me, a cup of hot coffee, and the kind of silence you earn, not the kind you're sentenced to. The walls are glass, but no one's looking in. Not out of fear, out of respect. Because here, titles don't mean insulation. They mean accountability. On the far wall, above a minimalist white bookshelf lined with compliance case studies and a few out-of-print manuals, hangs a framed quote in matte black. If you call someone decoration, make sure they're not the foundation. It was a gift from Janine. She sent it with a handwritten card that just said, "Still listening. Still learning." The firm I'm at now? They specialize in corporate forensics. Not the CSI kind. The real kind. Digital threads. Risk architecture. Unraveling the financial equivalent of bloodstains on white collars. They hired me within 3 days of Decimal Dagger's article going viral. The onboarding call was one sentence. We'd rather not find ourselves needing a Todd protocol. I started last week. No grand speeches. No welcome muffins. Just a badge, an access key, and total autonomy over their compliance systems. Today's my first quiet afternoon since the fallout. I lean back in the chair. The leather's stiff new. Still smells like the warehouse. A notification pings on my phone. Missed call. Blocked number, but I know who it is. I open the voicemail app. One new message. I swipe left. Delete. No hesitation. No curiosity. Just the muscle memory of a man who no longer bleeds for people who weaponize ignorance. I turn back to the window. 30 floors up, the city looks softer somehow. Not forgiving, just less interested in pretending. I respect that. I take a sip of coffee. No bitternis. Across the room, a junior analyst knocks once, hesitates, then cracks the door open. Hey, a question on the Q3 audit cluster. You mentioned flagging drift manually before the engine review. Still true. Still true, I nod. Show me your notes. Let's walk through it. He grins like he's being let into a secret. I stand slowly. No urgency. No tensión. Because the fire's behind me now. I didn't burn the house. I just stopped patching the cracks. And then I watched it collapse, brick by arrogant brick, until the only thing left standing was me.